This Hangout on Air is live. Cecil Lammy on assignment, and Dr. Gene, and soon the one and only Matt Waldman will be joining us. But Gene, before we jump in, and I'm sure Waldman and I will talk about this after he shows up too. What do you think about being a witness? We talk about being a witness, Cleveland sports.
Yeah, that's a Cleveland thing. Yeah.
Yeah, you're a witness now to Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, so far so good. Looks confident. Not too much trouble throwing the ball downfield. And in contrast to the issues that Tyrod Taylor was having with accuracy through that first quarter and part of the second, I'm sure there's lots of good reasons for the Cleveland fans to be cheering. We'll see if it lasts. Hopefully it does.
Yeah, Gene, I'm watching this game with the love of my life, Kate, and we're watching Tyrod Taylor, and she knows all about Baker Mayfield, and she asks me, well, why wouldn't they put in Baker Mayfield? What do you think about the philosophical scale here in this decision? Obviously, they were forced into it tonight, but they were maybe going to be forced into it. Do you fall more on the side of keeping the quarterback in the incubator, or do you think in this case, in some ways, the injury just did them the favor of not having to make the decision?
Probably a little bit of both. I'm generally informed by all things Matt Waldman, and I know that over the years with the RSP, he really strongly believes in giving the quarterback a little bit of time to kind of adjust to NFL life and NFL speed of football. Some players are ready, some players they are not. And I think, if you get a chance to learn behind somebody, Cleveland is not an easy situation right now at all. From losses to ties to coaching issues and so on and so forth. The nice thing that Mayfield's got working for him is he does have some weapons that he can throw to. And that offensive line is at least generally reasonable, even though if they haven't showed a ton of it tonight. So I think there's some good things to work with. I think all things considered, no matter how poorly the Browns have been playing and continue to play, it would have been best if he'd continued to watch for a little while, but he's going to get an opportunity here. Tyrod Taylor getting taken back to the locker room, I would generally think he's not coming back this game, but we'll see what happens at halftime.
And there's Matt Waldman, and Matt, we'll go a little deeper into this after Dr. Gene gives us a tour around injury situations in the league. But before we jump into that, Matt, and I'll ask Gene the first question after I hear your answer to this. Cleveland, Hugh Jackson had the decision made for him when Tyrod Taylor suffered a concussion, it looks like. And you can talk about it generally, but we can also talk about specifically, knowing what you know about Baker Mayfield. Do you think that if Tyrod Taylor hadn't gotten hurt, that it still would have been prudent for them to keep Mayfield out? Or do you think that at this point in the season, maybe we'd seen enough and it was time anyway?
I think from the fans' point of view, it's going to be time. But, to go against the grain with this, my belief is that Cleveland fans, Cleveland players, Cleveland coaches, and not all Cleveland coaches, because some of those coaches who are new actually know what winning is about. And I know that sounds like a cutting comment and fun,
No.
But it's true, because we were last night debating Josh Gordon on our roundtable this whole week, and a lot of our staff was talking about how Joe Thomas and the bunch of the players and coaches before all had good things to say about Josh Gordon, and I want Josh Gordon to succeed. I'm holding on to Josh Gordon in dynasty leagues everywhere. I've invested in it, but to say that they know what winning NFL football is and they understand what a winning culture is, and that you're going to believe them vouching for the player that he's a good teammate when basically this team's prepared around him for things that only he can do or be able to do better than anybody else, and then he ducks out like several times over 5 years because he can't handle the addiction that he has. That's unreliable. And to me, that's also hurting other players. So you can say he's a good teammate, but the fact is you don't know what a good teammate is. So to me, why I'm bringing that up is because Baker Mayfield, fans want him in, but the fans want anybody new in who's going to do something good. They're drowning for something good to happen. And Baker Mayfield is going to be better than Tyrod Taylor when it comes to reading the field and making good decisions when he has time. My concern is he going to have time to actually make those plays? And we're about to find out in a few minutes, whether or not they're going to be able to do that. And I think the answer will be yes, for, on a level that he may bring them back into this game. But long term, if this offensive line can't, really sustain an effort long enough, or teams start playing man instead of zone, because he picks people apart in zone. They start playing man. That's where he's going to get tested, especially if they're able to mount a pass rush. And if that happens consistently, that's maybe what the Browns are trying to avoid, is him getting beaten up, in year one. So we're going to find out.
Yeah, it should be interesting. And by the way, quick game update. Isaiah Crowell with 2 touchdowns and a great second touchdown celebration for the Cleveland, I guess. I don't know, but they've been running really well in the red zone. Sam Darnold's made a few throws to Quincy Enunwa, short throws, and Enunwa doing things after the catch. Tyrod Taylor was just so far off, and he underthrew Antonio Callaway on one that could have been a touchdown. Another one that it hung up long enough that someone was able to not make a play on the ball, but as they were trying to make a play on the ball, run into Callaway, or they ran into each other. And that was basically the Browns' offense in the first half. And they did get a field goal at the end when Baker Mayfield came in. But Sam Darnold looking good, and he's evading pressure, and he is showing that pocket presence that belies his years. But let's go now to injuries, Doc. We've got some stuff here. Let's start with Dalvin Cook. And I guess based on Cook, based on the Vikings, our scale of if he doesn't practice, if he gets limited practice, a full practice. And then in this situation, how much does it play into it that they're playing Buffalo? I know that, no NFL team goes in with their gloves down and says, we're going to win this game. But it's Buffalo. Does that mean that Minnesota is less inclined to risk Dalvin Cook's hamstring?
Maybe. I think the depth chart plays more of a role than the opponent. So the fact that Latavius Murray is there and can handle most, not as well as what Dalvin Cook can be able to do. Well, that's not good. I don't know who that is. Who is that? Is that Robertson, who just wrecked his knee? Oh, no, that's Burgess. Yeah, that one's not going to be good. I think it's going to be a Latavius Murray situation. So maybe, yes, they're not worried about the Buffalo game. Is this game at home, by the way, or are they traveling?
Yeah, it's at home.
Yeah, so I mean, that makes it maybe a little bit more likely that that Cook is going to be able to play. Sorry, I'm just watching this knee injury. That's not going to be good. So I don't know if we know a lot about Dalvin Cook. He's not been around long enough to be able to tell whether or not, if he's able to get back to a limited practice tomorrow, that's a good sign or not. I think I'm not really hearing much optimism, and I think there were some reasons to be concerned about this from the beginning. I think there were 7 plays in the final series and 2 or 3 plays in the series he left. He missed like 10 plays, and cramp or no cramp, that's probably not something that you would see in a close game divisional matchup overtime against Green Bay. So this was always going to be a little bit more than a cramp. I think what you hope is the situation looks a little bit more like what Leonard Fournette's looks like now, whereas it's precautionary for a week so that they don't put him at risk of an aggravation in a longer term situation. I think he's pretty clearly to the doubtful side of questionable right now, and I guess there's a chance we get a limited Friday practice and a game time decision type situation leading into the weekend. But I would prepare for him not to play this week and then hope that it's not a longer term deal.
Matt, you're on mute.
I am on mute, and I'm like going, oh, yeah, I'm supposed to ask Gene a question right now, aren't I? So Devonta Freeman, certainly, you mentioned pretty adamantly earlier in the week, or I don't know how adamantly, but you seem to mention that it's going to be a longer injury than just, a week, and that all that rehab he's doing isn't going to really change a knee contusion. What's your update midweek about this? Do you still feel the same way about it based on whatever new information that's come out?
Yeah, right. I mean, we don't have a lot of information about where specifically the injury is and how severe it may be. Different locations, if it's not quite if it's not in a weight-bearing location or something like that, may be a little bit better. But yeah, the rehab can keep him in condition. Rehab can make him feel a little bit better about things, but it's really not going to change the healing process. Not much that can be going on there. And the 2 to 3 week timetable is probably on the hopeful side. I'm not saying that this turns into 4 to 6 weeks necessarily, but I would bet on over 2 weeks for sure, and probably a little bit closer to 4. And again, the depth chart here is important. So the Falcons have the luxury of Tevin Coleman, Ito Smith, to a certain extent as well. If something happens with those other running backs, maybe they don't have the luxury of giving Freeman an extra couple of days to make sure that he's as healthy as possible. But a lot of that's going to depend on how much weight he can bear and how he's feeling otherwise. So I don't think this is going to be a super long-term injury, but it's much more week to week than day to day.
Let's just throw Julio Jones and T.Y. Hilton together, Gene. How much should I be looking at my bench options just to know who I have ready if I'm planning on starting Julio and T.Y. Hilton this weekend?
I don't think we're going to have a problem with Julio. He couldn't identify one particular play on which he was injured. He just described it as tightness. We've seen the Falcons and Julio in particular, but their wide receivers in general, miss practice throughout the week, do a little bit more on Friday, and then play effectively on the weekend. They let Julio talk to the media today. There didn't really seem to be any pessimism at all about him. You'd definitely like to see him. A full practice would be great tomorrow. And for him not to be listed on the injury report or on the game status report would be even better. But there doesn't seem to be much concern that he's not going to be able to go. And when Julio plays, unless there's some sort of clear, if he's limited and questionable, then I think you at least have to listen to things through the weekend. But I expect that we're going to get some positive news, even if it doesn't come until overnight on Saturday when we see what Rappaport and Schefter have to say. Hilton is a little bit different situation. After the game, Hilton said he'd be good to go. Today, when he talked to the media, he kind of suggested that it was a little bit more day to day, and he was hoping he'd be able to practice tomorrow. I still think he looks a little bit more probable than doubtful, but it would not surprise at all for him to be limited and questionable and be considered a game time decision where we're not exactly sure how this is going to go. And the Colts injury report this week is horrible. Got Jack Doyle that we don't know what's going on with. Anthony Costanzo probably aggravated a hamstring injury that could keep him out weeks and weeks more. We're not sure what's going on with Marlon Mack, whether that's a hamstring aggravation or whatever he's being listed for with a foot is an issue on top of that now. None of those players were practicing on Thursday, and the Colts really don't do much on Friday. So I think Hilton probably has the best chance of all those players to play, but tomorrow's practice report for Indianapolis is going to be one of the ones to watch for sure.
Well, I'm just laughing that every time I look at Brown special teams that they have Nick Chubb out there. But it's like using a Mercedes for I don't know.
Go to your groceries.
Or for towing, I think, basically. But that's another story. Marcus Mariota is tingling. That's one of the things that I've always giggled at a little bit, even though it's not a fortunate situation for him. When I look at our private message board, that's the title, Marcus Mariota is tingling. So can you kind of give us a little better context to that than what I read and giggle about with my bad mind?
Yeah, I mean, that's it. It's fun for us to giggle about, but it's not a comfortable situation at all. You basically having pins and needles in your hand and those couple of fingers that are responsible for a lot of grip strength, your ring and your pinky finger, 24 hours a day. And it's not comfortable at all. So it sounds like Mariota was able to do a few more things in practice today. What I saw on video really isn't informative. He didn't look like he was driving the ball downfield. He wasn't really asked to do that. He was just doing some light throwing to his receivers against air. It's nice that he's feeling comfortable enough to continue to test the throws. We didn't see a lot of images of the 11-on-11 work, but what was reported is that he was doing the vast majority of the first team work, and I think they'd like him to prepare to play. But it all comes down to what type of recovery happens between now and Sunday, and if he's got the feel to be able to throw the ball in game conditions at game velocity and with accuracy, then I think we may see him back out there. But from every report this week, he's not healed yet, and that's not really a day-to-day situation at this point. It could take another couple of weeks before he gets that feeling back. But the key is the grip strength. So he doesn't necessarily have to be fully recovered, but it's going to be a struggle for him if he's not. So I still have him listed as questionable. Given the fact that they didn't let him do much last week, he's going to have to show some pretty significant recovery from last Sunday to this Sunday for him to be allowed to go. They're just not going to put him out there in a situation where they're telegraphing their intentions, where when he's out there, they're going to do some variation of a running play or some short screenplay or something like that, because just it really dials down on what the defensive secondaries are able to do. So we'll find out tomorrow. It's a chance he gets listed as a full practice and we hear some positive things, but I think this is going to go down to how he feels in pregame warmups on Sunday again.
Gene, the Eagles are telegraphing that they're going to need help in their backfield this weekend by calling up Josh Adams. But we're used to dealing with soft tissue injuries, joints, with these running backs. Back injuries, though, Marshawn Lynch can play with back spasms, but Jay Ajayi, he's not Marshawn Lynch.
Well, I'm not sure I don't know that we should be certain that this is back spasms.
Well, no, and I'm just throwing out like the only other running back thing.
I mean, that would be your thought, right? So, he leaves the game early, goes back and forth to the locker room a couple of times, and continues to come back and play. So it kind of stands to reason that would be one of the more likely potential diagnoses. However, I don't know if it was Monday or Tuesday, I can't remember where I saw it. It's probably Tuesday. That he said he needs to get it right. And I'm not really sure what that means. That sounds a little bit suspicious for maybe some disc issues or something else. And again, I'm just freely speculating here, but there's not been any optimism with Ajayi from the beginning of the week. Just sort of, and the Sproles has been out too. So, promoting and signing running backs for practice purposes and otherwise in the beginning of the week is always a little bit of a red flag versus a Friday or a Saturday promotion. It just feels like there's really little chance that he plays. That plus his comments earlier in the week makes you think that this is more than spasms, and is this going to be something that turns into a multiple week issue? And how quick is he going to be able to recover? I don't know the answers to those questions, but I think you're absolutely right. I think this is all Corey Clement this week, and we'll see what happens from there.
So, when I see Jimmy Haslam and John Dorsey on the sideline, I don't think I've heard Jimmy Haslam talk, but I imagine someone imitating H. Ross Perot trying to talk to somebody imitating Vince
Lombardi. Tell you about here.
Yeah, and imitating someone who's imitating Vince Lombardi, in terms of Dorsey. So I wonder how that conversation sounds. But going to a little further south near your area, Joe Mixon, how long must we wait for him to come back?
At least a couple of weeks. I don't think they really want to put him out there if there's any chance that there's some leftover inflammation from the arthroscopic surgery. It sounds like he had a little bit of a meniscus tear, not so much where they were worried at all that they were going to have to do a repair and end his season. And when that happens, we've seen players. I heard Jason Wood on the couch ask specifically about some running back comps, and I haven't had a chance to look into that specifically. But there are players at many positions, offensive line. I can't recall a name, but I'm pretty certain that I'll be able to find a wide receiver or two who had this procedure over a bye week and didn't miss any time and come back in 2 weeks. And I don't think that's Cincinnati's plan for Mixon, but I don't think that this is going to last longer than 3 to 4 weeks. The concern is the longer it goes, do we lose enough conditioning where we're worried about compensation injuries when he comes back? And that can be an issue. So if we see him back and doing nearly everything after only missing a week of practice, in other words, if we see him do something on the practice week report next week in anticipation of coming back shortly after that, that's probably a good sign. If this leaks into 2 weeks without practicing and then needing a little bit of extra time from there, then maybe we have to worry that it's going to take a little bit longer. But we don't get a lot of information out of Cincinnati, but what we've seen so far, and Mixon is apparently really trying to get back and be cleared to do things, and his orthopedic surgeon is trying to hold him back. So I think all those are good signs. I think we'd lean to this being more on the 2 to 3 week side than the 4 to 6. But it's there's still some things that we have to watch with the practice report going forward.
Staying with the injured running backs, Gene, Leonard Fournette, and it looks like he's going to play. Certainly a better week of practice so far than last week, but how worried should we be? How much risk is there that he doesn't finish the game or isn't as effective, knowing what we know about his hamstring?
Yeah, ask me Sunday morning. But I think what we heard on Friday was that he was sprinting and running hard. Ian Rappaport very specifically said today that they held him out last week as a precaution because they didn't want to take any chance of aggravation at all. He's had 2 limited practices in a row, which means that the hamstring responded well to what he was asked to do last Friday and then this Wednesday. A lot of times we'll see players be asked to do a little bit more on Friday so that they can see how they respond through the weekend, even if they're not planning on playing. And then when sometimes Travis Benjamin, and then we see him not do well later in the week. So the fact that he was back on the practice field today, Blake Bortles had lots of good things to say about him. I think there's a chance we get a full practice from Fournette and not much concern going into the weekend at all. If it's limited or they're not letting him talk to the media or Doug Marrone has something concerning to say, then maybe we're going to have a discussion on Sunday about just how many snaps he's going to take and whether or not he's going to be able to assume a full workload. But we went through this last year with the ankle injuries that he had, and he took a week off. They allowed him to take as many touches as he could the week after he returned to practice. So that's something they've done in the past. I think that's the expectation as we're talking here on Thursday night. Tomorrow's practice is going to be informative, but I'm pretty optimistic that he's going to be able to take a full workload this week.
Gene, so tell us a little bit more about Paul Richardson and his issues. Where do you think he's going to be at?
Yeah, it sounds like he's got a shoulder joint sprain, one of those AC type situations, and he had going into and I think there was a little bit of an aggravation in the game. He didn't practice on Wednesday, did a little bit more today. Seems like he's going to be ready to go. Doesn't seem much concern that he's going to be able to play, but if it's something that's already been aggravated once, it's going to be at risk of occurring again during the game. So I'm cautiously optimistic about him. I don't think they're going to hold him out, but might be a situation where he doesn't play quite as many snaps, or he's at risk of leaving the field if he gets into a situation where he's tackled hard in the wrong way.
Let's go over the defensive side of the ball. Sunday Night Football, master versus pupil. Bill Belichick against Matt Patricia. And the stat that I've been citing all week is the Lions have given up, and Matt Waldman, and if you're not, we'll talk a little bit about the top 10, but Matt Waldman detailed the problems with the Detroit run defense. And the stat I've been citing is that Detroit's given up 78 points in their 2 games. And in the other 2 games that the 49ers and Jets played, those teams scored a combined 28 points. So you're liking your Patriots in this one. Except who's Darius Slay going to cover? But is Darius Slay going to cover anybody Sunday night?
No, he didn't practice again today. It seemed like there was some concern immediately about the concussion. There's a clear trend this year. In fact, I'm having trouble remembering if there has been a player. I think maybe one, just Kevin Johnson, maybe come to
Rex
mind.
Burkhead. Well, there's that.
Burkhead did that as well, where there correct. But I think there's a clear trend for the most part. We're seeing player after player after player. DNP on Wednesday, DNP on Thursday, and not playing. So that seems like the way it's going this week with New England's players and Detroit's players. So Trey Flowers doesn't seem like he's likely to play. Patrick Chung does not seem like he's likely to play. Neither one of those players has practiced at all for New England. Darius Slay as well. We don't really hear much from New England, so we're watching practice participation. But when Burkhead returned last week, we weren't really sure about the Wednesday situation because he didn't practice. But on Thursday, he was practicing, and then he got on the plane down to Jacksonville to play last week. That does not look like it's going to be the case. And we're hearing worse things about Slay, where it just doesn't seem like there's much chance of him going. So I'd be shocked if they allowed him to practice at all tomorrow. Maybe he gets a limited practice in, but even at that, it does not look like he's progressing well enough in the protocol for him to be going on to the independent neurologist. So even if he gets a little bit of practice in tomorrow, it may just be an early protocol situation where they're trying to prepare him for next week already, but I don't see him playing.
All right, so looking at this situation here with our offensive line, Andrus Peat, and Teron Armstead, both guys on New Orleans offensive line who are dealing with injuries. How do you feel about their ability to play and how well they can play based on the injuries they had?
I think they're going to be okay. Armstead was listed on the injury report last week and did fine. Pete missed week 1 with the injury that he's got, kind of fighting through that a little bit, was in and out of the game last week, but was tough enough to battle through it. Both of those guys in previous weeks missed practice time. And they've both been limited. So I think they're both preparing to play. They're just trying to manage the situation as well as possible so that they're not missing too many practice reps and that Pete stays on the field more often than not.
One last round, Dr. Gene. And Doc, this is where we need your bedside manner. I need your bedside manner. Hold my hand and tell me that Rob Gronkowski.
Yeah, you're gonna be okay. You're gonna get
it's
an I don't
only
know.
Weird if you think it's weird.
Yeah. You're gonna get an I don't know on that one. I knew exactly where you're going first round, Gronk.
Yeah.
Nothing. This is the situation we often get with the New England media. I think we're gonna get information about Gronk tomorrow. And somebody's going to know what's going on. There didn't seem to be any concern today, but the only note we got was he was added to the injury report with an ankle injury and nothing more than that. So whether it was something, it's not clear whether it was something that he struggled with in the game. I didn't notice anything, whether it's something that happened in practice today or yesterday. So that's something that hopefully we won't have much to talk about him on Sunday, where he'll be back to a practice and maybe not even listed. The nice thing about New England the last couple of years is they didn't go the way we thought they would go, where they just listed everybody questionable. now that there's no probable designation. Bill Belichick, even with his guys like Gronkowski, where you'd think that there was a chance that he wanted to play a little bit of gamesmanship there, that's not been the case. So with a little bit of luck, we'll find out that he's not even listed on the game status report, and he'll be good to go.
I love Cleveland's defense. They are getting so good, and I love Denzel Ward recovering this fumble here. It's so much fun to watch this number 4 pick. He's been playing great all year long, and it's also been kind of fun to watch Sam Darnold and Josh McCown on the sideline. They look like they come from the Bob's Big Boy Shoney school of faces in terms of quarterbacks. But let's talk about a pair of centers, because that's where the real work is done. Let's talk about John Sullivan and Billy Price. Each of those guys, one's hurt, and it said you were awaiting information about them, about Sullivan, and then there's Price. What's going on with these guys?
Yeah, we don't get a lot of information from the Rams. They tend to practice later than anybody else, and that injury report comes out so late to where it almost seems like the beat writers don't get a chance to talk too much about it. It's not good that he's not practiced the last couple of days. Sullivan's one of the players over time that will sometimes be able to play despite not practicing. This one feels a little bit concerning with the ankle, but we'll know tomorrow whether or not he's good to go. Price is going to be out a while. It sounded good when the Bengals said that he was going to be out a couple of weeks and then be reevaluated. But if you're in an immobilized situation for a couple of weeks and then get reevaluated, you've got a couple of weeks after that. So this is suspicious to be, multiple week type situation. I don't think they've got a center on the roster that's taken many snaps at center before. I'm not even sure who they're going to use there. Haven't followed up on that yet, but somebody's going to have to get up to speed quickly because they're going to be missing Price for a couple of weeks at least.
We are never suspicious of the advice, analysis, and general calming effect of the good doctor, Gene Bramall. Gene will be joining us again Sunday morning. He said, when Gene said, ask me Sunday morning, he really meant, ask me Sunday morning. So, folks, if you like our Thursday night show, tune in Sunday. Doc, thank you always for your sage advice and wisdom.
Well, hopefully I'll have some wisdom and some answers for you Sunday morning, at least a little bit more than tonight on some of these guys.
And thank you, Doc. And before we get into the second half hour, when Matt and I frolic, I've got to tell you, folks, week 3 is underway. Folks, this week only, we've unlocked all of the DraftKings content at footballguys.com. You can go check it out. The best part is you can use all of that free content to win a Football Guys subscription, providing you with high impact advice and stats for the rest of the year. Go to our site, read all of the DraftKings DFS content, enter the DraftKings Fantasy Football Contest, and if you're in the top 15, you will win a free subscription. Get all your picks in by 1 Eastern on Sunday, September 23rd, coming up. It's at the first 15 spots to get a free year of Football Guys, and this week only, all the DraftKings content at the Football Guys website is free. Go to dkng.co/footballguys to draft your lineup. Again, dkng.co/Football Guys. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com for more details. Matt, what did I just miss? Baker Mayfield almost throwing an interception in the end zone. And this is where you can maybe be speaking of sage advice, because this was something that was very unpopular in the draft community when you were one of the few people saying, hey, there are some flaws in Baker Mayfield's game. There are some things that, mentioned man coverage. We saw that in the game against Georgia when Georgia switched to man coverage. So keeping that in mind, I almost want to do, because your football mind is such a beautiful mind, and I want you to just tell people as they're watching this game with us, what should they be? It's 14-6 now, set up, as you said, by the Denzel Ward, a forced fumble and recovery off of Robbie Anderson. Give people a couple of things to look for as we watch the rest of this game to give an idea, because we know Baker Mayfield's going to be accurate, or we know that, we know what he can do well. What are going to be the indicators of how he's doing in the things that he doesn't necessarily do well?
Right, because the things you're seeing right now is that he gets rid of the ball quickly. He's able to read through progressions and throw guys open in zone. You're seeing that right now. Just very decisive, whereas Tyrod Taylor misses wide open guys, kind of has to move around a lot. You're not seeing a lot on the ball. There's not a lot of confidence on some of these throws. And because he buys time, he often runs into trouble. With Baker Mayfield, what you're going to want to see is when defenses start playing more zone and they're able to really just kind of do what the Bears did to Russell Wilson earlier this week, which was get pressure up the middle, but also on the sides and keep it closed in so that he can't filter out of the pocket and play tight man-to-man. And that's where you see the higher end accuracy, where while the statistical accuracy was great for him at Oklahoma, it didn't count context all the time of what you would project pinpoint accuracy to be against tighter man coverage. Even if people track man versus man coverage, if they're not tracking it specifically towards what an NFL standard is, as opposed to the fact that wide open in college football against man coverage is somebody with 3 to 5 steps on their defender, as opposed to, someone wearing the defensive back wearing the wide receiver like a glove, so these are things that we want to see, is that if you can see him, hit his man in stride with defenders tight to him while in tight coverage, and doing that efficiently, that's going to be helpful. Is he going to be able to throw, my buddy Eric Stoner always pointed this out, and I did see some of this, which was, can he throw the deep post and threaten that against cover 2 when they play, or not cover 2, but when they play 2 deep safeties? Is he going to be able to hit that post? Because that's when defenses go, oh, we have a problem, Houston, because this guy, we're going to be able to play this, and he can split that with confidence. That forces us to have to rearrange how we do things on defenses. That's why Mahomes created such an issue even before this year, is that against Denver, he was splitting the safeties in, 2 deep and doing it like it was nothing. And that scares a defense. So because they're forcing you to hit a smaller area in the middle of the field, that's a confidence, high accuracy throw. And while Mayfield throws the crossing route and the skinny post well, and some of these types of routes, you want to see him hit the deep post. You want to see him be able to hang in a tight pocket and make throws against tight man coverage.
So, folks, again, you should be, a Football Guide subscriber. And if you are, you should be reading the top 10 like I do every week. And I referenced you in Buy Low, Sell High this week, Matt, because after I watched the games this week and you watched the games this week, we came to similar conclusions. And one of these is where, we can hug it out and say we're seeing the same sorts of things about Marvin Jones. And I referenced in Buy Low, Sell High, you can make the case better than I can, because this is important. And I think one of the propositions that we need to put under the microscope here is, can an offense support 3 every week starters at wide receiver? And it sounds like from what you saw against San Francisco and what I saw against San Francisco, with just a little bit better play against San Francisco, Matthew Stafford, he basically did. Jones did score a touchdown. But the going forward, when we say which one of the Lions receivers do we play or which one do we bench, that the right answer is maybe play all of them, including Marvin Jones.
Yeah, just kind of have to write it out. And I love the fact that nowadays my quote work feud is with you talking about a few wide receivers that we like. That's fun. Though I do miss the days in my office where I used to take paper clips that were holding paper sales, and I used to have my staff clip them all together while they were on the phones and put them all together for the next shift. So my manager would pull them and there would be like a big 50-yard string. But that was fun to do on Saturday nights where I had to work. But I would say that really, when you look at this, Marvin Jones, there were 5 plays on Sunday where he was wide open on vertical route 4, where he was on vertical routes, and Matthew Stafford just missed him. I mean, just plain flat out overthrew the ball. And then he even overthrew a fade route to Marvin Jones in the red zone. That like the next play, they threw basically the same route to Michael Roberts for the touchdown. And Jones even scored a touchdown there. And then he overthrew Galladay as well on a deep route. So there were like 6 plays where, if Stafford was on his game, and you have to think that whatever he whatever injuries he has from the Jets hitting him on the previous Monday night, he was playing through that stuff and he wasn't quite right. So hopefully he's right enough that his deep accuracy comes back, because if it does, last week he could have matched Patrick Mahomes like touchdown for touchdown in the box score based on what was going on. So yes, I agree, and he continues to go to Jones. It's just that Galladay is playing very well. You can see a little bit more use with him in different routes than what they were doing in the past, and they're also using him in ways to kind of, I don't want to say hide him, but they're maximizing the surprise factor by using him on the wing as a big-bodied wide receiver who can block, and then sneaking him into coverage. And they're only doing it, they get to do it 2 to 3 times a game, but that's enough. And we saw it yielded a touchdown last week. So that's good for him. So you definitely want to start Galladay, but you want to be patient with Jones. And if people are wanting to unload him to you in a package deal, man, you better jump on that. You best jump on that right now. Yeah.
I think that's the thing, is that Marvin Jones, and hey, I was one of the people broadcasting this saying the wide receiver you take from the Lions is Kenny Galladay. Not that Tate and Jones won't have value, but you can get Tate in the 4th or 5th, Jones in the 5th or 6th, and Galladay in the 10th, and sometimes later.
Yeah,
just take Galladay. You don't need to take one of the other ones. And people that, and I wasn't the only one saying things like this, but people that were going in, because you were looking at the splits last year when Kenny Galladay was in, Marvin Jones numbers, targets, etc., tanked, and almost to the point where in some weeks he was unusable. And then you're seeing in the first 2 weeks 4 for 52, 4 for 52 in a touch, and people think, oh, this is what I'm going to get. He's going to have 60 catches for 800 yards and 5 touchdowns or something. But that's not what you're going to get. You're going to get something like last year. Maybe it's going to be concentrated in like 4 or 5 games, but you want to make sure you have him in. And this weekend could be one of those. As Dr. Gene said, Patrick Chung, Trey Flowers, these are important pieces. It could be a real shootout, especially with Josh Gordon. Speaking of Josh Gordon, here we are. He's limited in practice. I don't know how many snaps he's going to play. I mean, there's some chutzpah there to say, I'm going to play him this weekend, but maybe not this weekend. But going forward, ripple effect on this offense. How do you look at Tom Brady differently? Do you look at Julian Edelman? Do you look at how much differently do you look at Josh Gordon? I mean, you've been chronicling this for us. And so, I feel it here when I see you trying to say this is the story with a happy ending, and maybe we still have a chance for a story with a happy ending.
Yeah, that's a good question, because I'm kind of through in redraft leagues, but just because there's too much at this point for you to be able to look at this and say, I can wait. I mean, 4 years ago, you can say, all right, he has a problem. Hopefully he can get it back together, and he shows signs of that. And then you see the next increment where it's like, oh, well, at least he kind of like caught the issue before he like completely went off the wagon. That's good. But then you see okay, well, he can't handle a Hard Knocks, episode. He can't handle being on TV. He can't handle these types of things. He can't come, he tweaks a leg during a commercial, or, then you start to add this up, and there's a point where you realize that he is letting down his team, and he's letting down those people, like I said earlier. So, for redraft, if it works out, then yes, you have to look at everybody differently. You have to look at Sony Michel differently if he continues to play more and more and more throughout the week. That was a nice out by Baker Mayfield with some zip on it. But from that perspective, that's helpful. But the thing is in Dynasty, listen, I mean, if you've invested in him and waited on him and done this, I kind of attribute it to the Field of Dreams thing. You've basically heard the voices to build the baseball diamond. You did that in your farm. You drove across the country to meet some activist writer you've never met and beg him to come across the country with you to come do something that you don't even know what you're going to do. And now you're going to sell the farm for pennies on a dollar because basically people are freaking out. Finally, now they're starting to freak out. No, you don't be a wuss. You actually you stick with it till the end, even if you fail miserably, because otherwise you made this ballsy bet and then you just wussed out at the very end. You got to see it through. So that's where I'm at with Josh Gordon. Is Dynasty full steam ahead. Redraft, it's like if someone's frustrated and wants to trade him to me, and I can get him cheap, and I know that's not happening in any leagues I'm in, then yeah, sure, go for that.
As we're watching Baker Mayfield, and we're going to see what happens. Just really quick knee-jerk reaction, because I was actually writing up. It's funny. Cecil and I talked about the Cleveland game last week, where they all but beat New Orleans, and we agreed that it's time for Baker Mayfield. And I understand your perspective, and I think that maybe Baker Mayfield, like Patrick Mahomes, could benefit from time on the bench, but at a certain point, you have to say, we have to change the vibe around this. And I was thinking about guys like David Njoku and even Rashard Higgins, Duke Johnson.
Sure.
Who do you think could be the biggest beneficiary if we find out, hey, week 4, the starter for Cleveland, and now I want to see who the starter for Cleveland against the Oakland Raiders will be Baker Mayfield. Who's the biggest winner for fantasy?
Oh, it's going to be Njoku and Hyde, because really it opens up the run game a little bit more because of the fact that now you have a quarterback who's going to hit things on time and be efficient. And you're going to have to do a little bit extra and not just stop the run, and know that that pressure on the passer isn't necessarily going to cause him to self-destruct and get overly conservative. And then Njoku is a guy that I think Tyrod Taylor, you have to remember, they actually showed tape to him during a summer in Buffalo saying, look, and here's Njoku right there. Oh, no, that's not Njoku. Excuse me. That's number 80.
It's just Jarvis Landry gobbling up everything.
Yeah,
I mean, it could be Jarvis Landry. I mean, the biggest winner could be Jarvis Landry going from like 6 for 70 to 10 for 110 every week.
I think it really raises all boats, the guys that you would expect to be good, because he's going to hit guys who are open, and he sees that and understands how to read those keys a little bit better than I think what we saw from Tyrod Taylor. And the thing is again, they showed all this tape to Tyrod Taylor a couple years ago saying, here's how many times you didn't see Charles Clay. If Charles Clay were in a different offense, he would be a top 10 tight end easily. Might be a top 5 tight end in terms of ability, but Tyrod Taylor couldn't find him in the field, in the middle of the field, no matter, as much as we've defended him in a lot of ways of how he's played. Baker Mayfield is an upgrade. The only, I understand why you guys would say it's about time to see him, and I think that it makes sense from a fantasy standpoint. You do want to see him. You don't care whether he develops or not for a team.
I'm a Steelers fan.
You're a Steelers fan. Come on, what do you care? But I mean, if he gets banged up a whole lot along the way and kind of starts to screw up, that's fine as long as he's scoring points. But I think that from that standpoint, that's probably what they're looking at, and also to, the conspiracy theorist part of me and mine, and please don't pay attention to this too seriously, but is that Cleveland's like, look, we're about to right the ship. We have a good defense, and yep, did Baker just get sacked and fumbled the ball? Yep.
For the second time tonight.
Yeah, for the second time tonight. So, and that's the thing. That's the other criticism.
It was just a 2-point conversion, but
that's all. Yeah, but that's the criticism of him as well, is that he can try and buy a little too much time and think that he is, a better scrambler than he really is, because he got away with it at Oklahoma. And even even Troy Aikman alluded to that in this game early in the first half. So it's more than anything is you don't want to see him get into quicksand. It's not so much that he's not ready. You just don't want him to get in quicksand and have things get worse and worse and worse, and it kills his confidence. And you don't want to, what is it, David Carr? Is it Derek or David? I forget. Derek Carr, so that's that, or David Carr, excuse me. Yeah.
Oh, there's a penalty, so he's going to get another go at it.
Look at, here we go.
Yeah. This is fun. I mean, it's fun. It's entertaining. That's what I'm saying. As a Steelers fan, the Browns' long-term interests, no. But I'm watching a game on a Thursday night. I want it to be an entertaining game. So we're going to all eventually watch this 2-point conversion together, and then we're going to move on.
Yeah, and we get
something like, it's like the Cleveland special. A Cleveland. I don't want to say Cleveland steamer, because some people are going to. Well, I already did. There you go, folks. Cecil. Sorry, Joe. That's one of my first sorry Joes. And I shouldn't even say sorry, Joe.
As long as it can go in a Primanti sandwich, we'd be okay.
Well played. Wow. That was like one of those ones where you throw in the grenade and you pick it up and you throw it right back. That was well done. That was really well done.
That's why people love watching us watch Browns and Steelers games together, you know?
Yeah.
I mean,
You never know what's going to happen there. I didn't see who threw the pass, but Baker Mayfield catches the 2-point conversion, and I believe that counts for your fantasy leagues. 2 points for Baker Mayfield and 2 points for whoever threw that one. I've been giving you your propers. I mean, it's so much fun that we get to talk at least twice a week, Matt, about football. I guess it was Jarvis Landry, because the best moment from last week's Sunday morning show was a moment for you that was just kind of, I don't want to say a throwaway moment, but I was asking you about Ryan Fitzpatrick because Philadelphia's defense is good. Even it's not the same defense on the road that they are at home, but it's a good defense. And New Orleans defense, at least in week 1, was a horrendous defense. And I said, hey, does this come back to earth? Do we see a correction? And you said, I don't think so. I don't know. I think they're going to keep spreading them out. And Ryan Fitzpatrick's going to keep hitting them. And I think you roll with this. And wow, you might have been the only person saying that. So I have to come back to you now, and we may come back to this also. But I'll cast it this way, because in fantasy football, you've been playing it long enough, and maybe you remember the 2007 Patriots, or you remember the Rams teams from almost 20 years ago, where one offense can change the destiny of fantasy teams. And you're just asking yourself, well, do I have any Chiefs to play this week? It's the Chiefs, right? Now 2 weeks in, and I get it, next week will be Chicago, and that'll be a good test, and so on and so forth. But this week it's the Steelers, speaking of watching Steelers games. And I don't expect, although this could be where the football gods laugh at me and say, haha, you think you know. I don't expect we're going to be talking about the Tampa offense that much differently in a few days than we are right now. So should we be looking at Chris Godwin, Deshaun Jackson, O.J. Howard, Ryan Fitzpatrick the same way as one of those who are the rising tide? I mean, this is a rising tide that's like a tsunami.
Yeah, absolutely. Because when did Ryan Fitzpatrick ever have any weapons like this in Buffalo or New York? I mean, he had one, maybe two, who were anything remotely the athletic mismatch that they provide across the board. Chris Godwin in Atlanta could be Roddy White. I mean, that's the kind of player he's capable of being. Honestly, that's the player I should have compared him to when I watched him. He is Roddy White. He's big, strong, he's fast, he can win deep, and he can run great routes and play any position on the field for wide receiver. So you have that along with Mike Evans, who somebody, whether it was him watching his own film or somebody else, lit a fire under his backside.
You could put together a tape of like a year of his career, but it didn't happen in a consecutive year where he played like this.
Yeah.
And now and I have to wonder how much of it is Brian Fitzpatrick really having this team engaged. Anyway,
all I know is this: I did some tape on him this past summer, and looked at all his red zone plays, because Gene Clemens from Football Game Plan said that Mike Evans was more of an issue in the red zone than Jameis Winston was. And I watched, and he was 100% correct. Mike Evans was playing like he had cement in his pants. I mean, it was awful. And compared to what he's capable of. And this entire summer, watching him, even in practice, he was running with that kind of kinetic energy you see like Adrian Peterson run with. And when you see a player who runs with that kind of energy, Juju Smith-Schuster has that kind of energy when he plays. Hines Ward had that kind of energy. You can see it. It almost looks like, I don't know how to put it, but it almost looks like they're vibrating as a player, like their body's almost like kinetically vibrating, like the little kid on Looper. Yeah, like the little kid on Looper who's like about to like destroy the world around him. That's what they look like when they play with that urgency and energy. And Mike Evans had that, and he's been playing that way throughout. You add on to the fact that O.J. Howard's actually getting to be used like the athlete he is, and not in the 1920 offense that Nick Saban ran at Alabama for tight ends. You add all that together, and then Deshaun Jackson. I mean, I would, every time, if I were Drew Brees, and I'd be a much meaner person than Drew Brees. If I were Drew Brees, I'd look at Ted Ginn and go, why in the F do we not have Deshaun Jackson?
Last week, Ginn was free deep and Brees missed him. So
that's true. So that's on him. But But still, I would still look at Ginn and go, Deshaun Jackson knockoff. As good as you are, Ginn, I would still feel that way. So
it's true.
combine all that, it's just amazing.
It is, and it's going to be fun to watch, and everyone's going to get to watch Fitzmagic on Monday, and I love this. This is one in all the years we've been doing shows, all the years I've been working for Football Guys. This has been absolutely one of my favorite stories. But I've got to ask you, because watching the game last week, watching the Tampa Philly game, I love Peyton Barber, and I'm sure that he's done enough in his career now to be able to help out his mom and to cement himself as a guy who's going to have a good career in the NFL. Right. I mean, earnings wise, and he's a useful NFL running back, but that's it. He's a useful NFL running back.
Right.
And it sure feels like there's something with this, the pendulum effect, right? I mean, defenses are going to have to spread everybody out. They're going to have to overplay all of these amazing talents. So, I mean, maybe they just continue to go with Peyton Barber for, 3.5 yards a carry, but we got an either or here. I mean, one is see if someone dropped Ronald Jones, or, and this is one you can just spike it right on my face. Could Sean Wilson have a little Philip Lindsay in him in this offense? Maybe.
He could, because of the fact that he can catch the ball and he's used to playing in these types of situations, whereas it seems like Ronald Jones has struggled in that regard as a receiver, and he hasn't picked things up very well in the preseason. I think Peyton Barber's kind of like your Bilal Powell type of player. And we've seen that with Powell. I mean, Powell looks like the best runner on this team for the past couple of years, but it was slow and steady. There were a few years you looked at him and go, the way you described Peyton Barber was exactly the way you would have described Bilal Powell for the first 5 years of his career. Yeah. And now you look at Powell and you're looking at going, that's the kid I saw at Louisville. Yeah. Like, that's the guy. But and funny enough, I think he's pretty much outgained most of the prospects of his class, in the class that he was in. I think he was my number 3 guy, and he might be the number 3 gainer at this point, just from a longevity standpoint. But yeah, I think Powell's the guy. I think Barber's a guy that you're looking at this, and you're probably waiting for the defense to react. But you at this point, trying to invest in any of these other guys, I don't think you're going to get anything. I don't think you're going to get Philip Lindsay out of Sean Wilson, just because Philip Lindsay has an offensive line that's tested. And I'm not sure this offensive line in Tampa is a very good run blocking unit. Whereas I think when you spread it out, they're a little bit easier as a pass protecting unit.
Can we get some LeGarrette Blount out of Josh Adams in front of a much better run blocking team?
Ooh, yeah, I think we could. I mean, I don't think it's going to be as good as Blount, but there's some talent there with that guy. He had some weird knee issues over the past couple of years at Notre Dame, and you could see it last year that he wasn't playing the way that he was capable of. But he's a guy that he's got some power. He certainly has some straight line speed and long speed when he can break open. So he's a guy that, and I liked what I saw this preseason from him. He looked pretty darn good. So yeah, he's someone I would watch and keep an eye on, and maybe even take a preemptive pickup if you're in a deeper league.
I did in the Scott Fish Bowl. And I'm also in dynasty leagues. See, I'm using this few minutes to pick your brain, not just for my teams, for everyone's teams out there, but also I think this is one of the keys now. Everyone's thinking week to week, short term, but maybe some long term things. So last week we saw Tevin Coleman get in to start, but Ito Smith looked pretty damn good behind him, and everyone knows about Ito Smith. All right, and if Tevin Coleman goes down, Ito Smith is going to be a guy that we're going to be very excited to have, at least until Devontae Freeman comes back. And the situation is not quite the same, because Devontae Freeman's injury, he could come back in a few weeks, and then it could come up again. Because just when a guy's not comfortable with his knee and it's not getting surgically corrected, I wonder. So I'm not saying that Dalvin Cook's hamstring is going to be that kind of issue. However, don't think we're going to see Cook this weekend. Maybe. Either way, it's Buffalo, so unless Josh Allen does something incredible, by the third or fourth quarter, we'll be in garbage time. We probably won't see much of Cook or Murray. Rock Thomas, who I like, who's got a great pedigree, I think he's a little banged up. So it's Mike Boone time. What about Mike Boone? Could we be talking about Mike Boone come Monday the same way we were talking about Ito Smith a few days ago?
Yeah, absolutely. He's a rugged guy. He's a fun runner. Certainly a good after contact player who you definitely want to keep an eye on there. And if you are desperate for some reason in a league that all the running backs are eating up, he's a guy that you might want to consider, as that late pickup and hope for as your lottery ticket, because he's kind of that reasonable play, kind of like my wife's system for running for lottery tickets. She's got a weird system and it works out. I don't know how to. I think if she ever loses her job as a corporate negotiator and sourcing director, she could probably run one of these betting sites, but do it for lottery tickets. It's hilarious.
That would be wonderful, actually. Where do I sign up for her newsletter?
I know, right? We're gonna have to get a newsletter for her. That's for sure.
Last one in this vein, and I think anytime I get to host, I might try to do this with you, or we'll do this on Sunday mornings because this is fun for me. Mark Walton, uh, getting to back up Giovanni Bernard this week, and my impression of Mark Walton at Miami was some parts of his game were outstanding. Some parts of his game, there's probably somebody better on your end. I mean, now it's Thomas Rawls. Like, is this one of the situations where if Giovanni Bernard goes down? They went and signed Thomas Rawls, and some of that's Trey Carson. But what's your impression of how excited you would be? And it's those preemptive pickups, because I think that you tucked it in there parenthetically, but sometimes it's that last pickup before games kick off on Sunday. You're like, okay, you know what? Sure, I'll add Ito Smith or I'll add Mike Boone, and then during the game, Tavius Murray goes down, and the next thing you know, you have starting Vikings running back Mike Boone. Is Mark Walton someone to look at in that vein?
He can be, but it's iffier than it seems, because he's a guy that draftniks love. They love him because he was the underrated guy all last year, and he looked better 2 years ago than he did last year. But even 2 years ago, he doesn't have the greatest vision and decision making, and so he's got great cutback ability. He's got quickness, great second effort. He's someone with terrific balance. He makes plays that you look at and go, that's a starting running back in the NFL. And then you watch him make decisions and you go, that's a guy struggling for a roster spot in the NFL. And if he can fix the latter, then you're going to see the former. I don't think he's not as physically talented as Marlon Mack, and he's not as bad at decision making as Marlon Mack. But because he's not on either end of those spectrum, he's still kind of a bit of an unknown. I would say I don't trust him as someone that I would want to make a pickup with, because I think Mixon's going to be back pretty soon.
Yeah. If anything, this might be that rare time, and Dr. Gene was giving us a subtle little nudge in the direction of maybe trade for Joe Mixon. This is one of those moments where Mixon's in that moment where you can get him, and in a few weeks you might not be able to, but in a few weeks we'll be here with you. We're here with you every Thursday night, every Sunday morning, and then I think 9 episodes of the Audible every week. Of course, if you're a Football Guy subscriber, and if you're not, and if you aren't and you want to try to get in, remember dkng.co/football guys, top 15 win a Football Guy subscription. So go check that out. And all of the DraftKings content of Football Guys is free this week. But we're there with you, Football Guy subscribers. Buy those all high, the top 10, Gene Brammel's injury rounds, and so much more. Ryan Hester's trend spotting,
waivers of the future,
Daniel Simpkins, and so on and so forth down the line. So many great people that we ourselves, Football Guy staff members, are reading other Football Guy staff members, including every week I'm reading the top 10, and we want to be the best we can be for y'all. It's a real privilege. When Matt is telling his story about what work feuds used to be like, and we're very lucky to have a chance to share this work space with all the fellow football guys. But the only reason we have this opportunity is because of you. And it's a pleasure to serve. It's a privilege. We enjoy sharing the space. Thank you for sharing some of your life with us and sharing this wonderful journey of football. We have quite a fourth quarter with the Mayfield Darnold narrative. May it start, as they were talking about. Neither of them knew who the Browns were going to pick.
Thank you for letting me rib Jason Wood weekly.
Yeah. Oh, sure. It's good. It's always
That's
fun.
What I'm thankful for.
Yeah. It's there's so many thankful things. And Woodrow on the couch this week. Make sure to check that out.
Oh, that'll be good.
Wonderful times, folks. Hope you have a great week 3 again. Matt and Dr. Gene and I will be back here on this YouTube channel Sunday morning. Thank you, everybody, pushing us over 400. We're well over 100 tonight, which I know from when I'm hosting, that's also outstanding turnout. I know I wasn't able to, when I'm hosting, it's a lot for my brain to host and chat. So I'm sorry I wasn't able to join you all, but the chat room, so many people we love there. Wendell, Henry, I can't even like list everybody off, but folks, it's a real joy to get to serve this community. So thank you for the opportunity. Enjoy the rest of the game. Enjoy your week 3. We'll be here with you.